I've only been hit twice there at Patton State Hospital. I've come from a family of 7. I'm the only psych tech. But it pains me to no end when I hear that one of my colleagues has been injured. It hurts me tremendously because there's nothing we can do, but there should have been something done. So in closing, let's see, I think I wanted to say one other thing. That's it. In closing, I wanted to thank you one more time. And I do want to ask, is your job safe? Is your job safe? Because my job isn't. I live and I work in a dangerous environment. So that being said, I want to remind you guys, that's why we're here. Our jobs are no longer safe.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mitch,
What I'm going to do, because I want to, we're over time, but it's very important to me that we get the panelists up here, and I also want public testimony. So I'm going to ask that Paul Hanula from Atascadero State Hospital, Adriel Reyes from Coalinga, and Kobe Pizzotti both all come forward as a panel. And then we will go to public testimony after they have testified. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Paul, you want to go first?
Sure. First of all, I wanted to thank you guys for listening to us today. I really appreciate it, Mr. Chair and committee, whoever's left. I'll make it short and painful. My name's Paul Hanula. I've worked at DMH for almost 10 years. I'm proud to be a psychiatric technician and chapter president of Atascadero State Hospital of CAPT. I'm here today to present a great safety concern that directly impacts the safety of the staff at Atascadero State Hospital and hopes for them to be addressed. First, acuities. They determine the amount of nursing staff we receive for each shift. Often these are not even adhered, and we are made to operate at minimums that were implemented in 1981. Those are 8 to 1 on AMs, 8 to 1 on PMs, and 16 to 1 on nights. These minimums were placed 30 years ago into place. That was even before the Wellness and Recovery Program was implemented by DMH and DOJ. Alarm system dead zones. Currently, there are dead zones at Atascadero State Hospital where if staff members trapped in a patient room with the door closed, the alarm systems currently do not function, therefore leaving the staff member without means to call for help. Special incident gear. Even though Atascadero State Hospital used to provide special incident gear that protected staff from most severe injuries, such as during room extractions, the equipment was pulled and is now not available to utilize. Danger to other one-to-one orders. When a patient has been deemed by a physician to be a direct danger, staff can be ordered to stand right beside them to monitor. Even though there have been some changes to the guidelines in regards to the distance after many staff injuries, it is still not policy to not have such orders placed. Standalone program. Mismanagement of staffing causing mandatory overtimes, fiscally irresponsible actions. For the past year, mandating level of care staff on a daily basis from shift to shift has become the norm, not the exception. Exhausted staff decreases safety, impacts health dramatically, and decreases quality in care. Medication options. Options to refuse medication, inconsistent treating physicians, such as contractors, and tremendous amounts of paperwork leading to a consistency of non-therapeutic medication levels causing psychotic flare-ups and relapses. Unfamiliarity of patient's history and behavior patterns. Also treating the chart over treating the patient pattern mindset by pressure of completion of documentation. I would like to have the following issues to be addressed. A review and change of the staffing ratios in order to provide a safe environment for patient and staff that also includes the demands that are requested by the Wellness and Recovery Program, which currently are not. A complete analysis and tests of the ASH alarm system and for any such danger areas that could potentially lead to such an incident, such as at Napa, to be brought up to safety standards. special incident gear to be reintroduced to the units, and proper training to be provided to the staff. Policy preventing orders that place staff directly in danger to other one-to-ones, and the standalone program to be removed and to return to hospital-wide staffing. Originally, it was meant to provide consistency in care, but it is only upheld on a very inconsistent basis. At Atascadero State Hospital, level of care are being assaulted continuously. We have taken many actions to try and address the safety, including showing firsthand Senator Sam Blakesley a daily routine, during which, in that short time period, he witnessed violence at ASH. We know our job is dangerous, and we continue to protect the public, evaluate, and treat the patients. All we are asking for are the tools to complete the job and the safest environment possible. And also, I have really great hopes for this ET unit. Recently, there has been more cooperation from the administration at Atascadero State Hospital. It's been a very slow move, but I have seen this before. The Cal OSHA lady, who I also want to thank for doing the investigation in 2003, that was my manager. I was assaulted. It was a lady about your size, and she had her skull beaten in against the cement over and over and over again. I went to that trial. I saw firsthand what happened. The unit fell apart. Staff, patients, everybody was extremely impacted by this. What happened is that there was a big fuss in the beginning about it, and everything trickled off. That's why I would ask here for timelines to be set in so that this can be completely carried through and that we don't have another rerun of the same incidents.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Adriel Reyes. I'm a Chief Facility Steward with ASME Local 2620 and a clinical social worker out at Coalinga State Hospital, where we work with the sexually violent predators. I want to thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to be here today. And so some of the individuals that we work with at the hospital, not just our facility, but just statewide, obviously are highly violent and predatory individuals. And they tend to be housed with just more vulnerable patients, and where they extort, rob, assault, and tend to manipulate the lower functioning individuals that are on those units. And that's why there is a need for enhancement treatment units to safely house and treat most of the violent and manipulative predatory patients that that are currently allowed to roam free with all the other individuals as well. These units, they should include hospital police for more security, enhanced staffing to work with these violent patients, also more training for the staff and the police officers as well, because it's it's already difficult enough to work with this population, but to work with somebody that's a little more tend to be more violent, more predatory, more higher psychopathy is we do require more training. And at Napa, the estimate for converting one of these units to an enhanced unit is, I think, $180,000. That's less than 1% of what DMH spends on workplace injuries. These predatory and violent patients take up a lot of our time and require more attention than the others due to their their behavior. It's when someone acts up, it's not just one staff member that works with that person. It's like a whole team that gets involved, and they take up a lot of our time, and it takes away from the other individuals that are programming a lot of the times, and it's not fair to the individuals that are programming a lot, and we want to provide the treatment. But when we have to deal with all these safety concerns, a lot of times we take away from the programming. And for example, like last week I had death threats done against me from one of the individuals, and after searching his area, his living area, he had razor blades, he had gardening equipment, he had rusted nails, all that stuff to be found in his possession. Here's an individual who's very intelligent. He's mechanically inclined, was a mechanic out in the community before, and he could easily manufacture a weapon. The day before, he was in my face, screaming and yelling all kinds of obscenities. And this is a daily occurrence and that we have to deal with. And these are the type of individuals that would seem fit to be on a more enhanced treatment unit. A lot of the patients also deal in drugs, and in our facility, child porn. They're involved in gang-like activities. And that all this stuff calls for a greater need to have enhanced treatment, in order for us to provide better treatment for everyone overall. It's just a small population that caused the majority of the problems in all of our hospitals. 10 months after Donna Gross was killed, by a predatory, violent patient, they're still allowed to be mixed up with their general population. So there's a need for these units, specialized treatment units. There's a need for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Pisati.
Mr. Chair and members, I'm Kobe Pizzati with California Statewide Law Enforcement Association. I represent the hospital police officers at all the state mental health facilities. I think our biggest issue is staffing vacancies. And it's not so much the vacancies in as much as it is, what does it actually take to do the job effectively? In 2007, CSLEA met with the executive director at Napa State Hospital, and we brought forward a statistic. And that statistic was there was 76 hospital police officers worked 72,000 hours of overtime that year. We told the then director, Folk, or executive director Folk, that something terrible is going to happen, and unfortunately it did several years later. Last year, there was 74 officers that worked 82,000 hours of overtime. I think that should be a tragedy in itself, is the amount of hours that these people are working is working them to the bone, to the sense that they get burned out. They truly do get burned out. Now, that's not even the worst case of short staffing. That's the worst case of a facility not having enough employees to do the job effectively. We did an analysis. If you took away all the overtime, it would take 140 hospital police officers just to do the posts that are currently established. You add any more assignments onto that, and you increase the number exponentially. Currently, Napa State Hospital has 78 filled positions, yet they're budgeted for 106. Patton, and this is what Mark was getting to, Patton has 22 hospital police officers, yet are budgeted for 62. Atascadero has 97 hospital police officers filled, 111 budgeted. Metro, 46 filled, 62 budgeted. Coalinga has 180 filled, 223 budgeted. Now you get into the area of the hiring freeze. And the hiring freeze has caused multiple problems, especially when you can only hire through attrition. So the 40 additional positions that the hospital police got system-wide in this year's budgeted can't be hired because you're only getting the positions that are vacated by attrition to be exempted from the hiring freeze. I think one of our top recommendations would be to lift the hiring freeze for hospital police officers and probably psychiatric technicians, as they provide the most security to the hospitals. One of the biggest problems that you have in hiring more hospital police officers is the length of time it takes to hire an HPO. From what I've heard from my officers, it takes anywhere from 12 to 14 months from the time you fill out your application to the time you get boots on the ground. And that in and of itself is just, it's completely unacceptable. There's too many repetitions, there's too many delays, too much bureaucracy in place. One thing that I would like to say is that the Director of Long-Term Care, Cindy Rudavsky, has met with us and her staff on several occasions to talk about the hiring process, and she wanted to get our input, which I think is exceptional, because prior to this new administration with Director Allenby, that was not the case. We didn't have this kind of communication, so I would like to say thank you for that. It's a sign of hopefully more good things to come. We think there's a couple of things that could speed up the process, and one is up front, advise the candidates before they go in to take an examination for a hospital police officer of what the qualifications are, so you can weed out the pool a little bit and you don't waste time doing a ranking and grading of a test that the person is not going to meet the minimum qualifications. So that would be just a recommendation we could do. Also, doing the written and oral psych evaluations immediately, do a medical examination immediately, and the blood work and physical agility tests all within a week's period of time, would cut down on the amount of time that it would take to get somebody in place. Department of Corrections used to do this not too long ago. I don't know what their time frame is now, but I know that it used to be about 6 months from application to boots on the ground. So it's something we've recommended and we think is would be a step in the right direction. And then, as my colleague here said, contraband sets up a transactional environment at the state mental hospitals, and it's a huge problem. There was a recent sweep at Atascadero that found, let's see, I think I had the information. It turned up cell phones, tobacco, illegal drugs, weapons, and thumb drives with pornography on. So we introduced a bill, actually a coalition of labor unions got together and introduced a bill that now makes it a misdemeanor for staff and visitors to smuggle in any cell phone, tobacco, or cash over the allotted amount. That actually, I'm happy to report, was by Senator Blakesley and is on its way to the governor right now. One of the other things that I would really like to emphasize is in 1998, there was a Bureau of State Audits report on hospital safety. This was done at a time when the hospitals were about 50-50 forensic and civil commitments. Now they're 92% forensic. I mean, even then there was recommendations made that have been, I guess, fallen on deaf ears. One of the many recommendations for improvements was implementing a structural fence around each of the hospitals. That's been done. We're glad to see that taken place. But some of the other things have not been. One of the recommendations was the department should seek legislation to basically have any assault on staff be considered a felony. One of the problems that we've ran into is that DAs are not prosecuting misdemeanors. They simply don't have the resources and are not going to waste the time to prosecute anything less than a felony, especially when you have a patient that is going to probably plead not guilty by reason of insanity or incompetent to stand trial, and they're also in a custodial setting or a secure setting. So you already have that going against you. We tried this year to get gassing to be made a felony. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. That came out of Atascadero, where we had a hospital police officer have urine thrown in her face. The patient ended up having HIV and was Hep C positive. So we believe that some of these things can be taken care of legislatively. Now to get on to the enhanced treatment units, and you mentioned this earlier. The enhanced treatment units were actually an idea brought forward by the coalition of labor organizations at one of our meetings with the Department of Mental Health. After several conversations, the department agreed to go forward with these enhanced treatment units, and we are, I have to say, very pleased about that. We were told that the enhanced treatment units would be done in one location. That would be at Atascadero, and they'd be roughly 27 patients would fill these this unit, I guess, and it would take roughly 5 patients from each hospital and put them in one central location. We were told that it was going to be rolled out in April of next year, and Atascadero didn't receive additional staffing in this year's budget because it'd be requested in the following year's budget. Unfortunately, Atascadero is going forward with the ETUs immediately, and they're doing it without the safety precautions that we think are necessary in order to make them successful. One of those things were locking doors with ports cut out where the patient could have his hands put through the port and shackled if necessary. The other one is the staffing ratios that are going to be needed to house that or to staff that unit. We believe going forward without the existing, or going forward based on the existing resources is not going to be sufficient to do this successfully and securely. We would like to see that, go forward in a manner when the resources are provided, and this is one of the reasons why I wanted to bring it up, because you people are you hold the purse strings, so to speak. So bringing the issue forward may help grease the wheels in terms of getting the budget allocated. So we were very encouraged that this is an idea, and we're still working with the department on trying to get the implementation in a way that we think would be beneficial. Finally, I just wanted to touch bases with the committee on some legislation. I've already mentioned SB 796 by Senator Blakeslee and the contraband. Then there's your bill, Mr. Allen, AB 366, which deals with involuntary medications. I believe that's in Senate appropriations right now. SB 794 died in Senate Public Safety due to the ROCA issue. SB 60 is up on Thursday in Assembly Appropriations. This is actually, I think, a very important bill. It deals with patient assessment. It allows for the department to assess a patient prior to its intake into the hospitals on their patient's propensity for violence, their gang-related activity, their criminal history. We think that is incredibly helpful when you're determining where that patient needs to be. You have some facilities that are designed, like Napa and Metro, for lower to moderate risk patients, while Atascadero and Patton have higher level security measures. So this bill would help, I think, go a long way towards making the overall general plan of the hospital system more safe. So with that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, I failed miserably as a timekeeper. We're at 4:30, but I feel it's important we get, when we're together, this testimony out so we can all hear it together. I'm going to now open up the mic for public testimony. I know Mr. Sean Webb made a previous request to come first up, and then I don't know how long you have, Rico, but I'm willing to stay as long as necessary.
Yeah, me too. Don't feel bad, Mr. Allen. My hearing on Adult Day went 2 hours over. So we were supposed to go 2 to 4, and we went to 6. So
please come forward, and we'll just, all I ask is that folks identify themselves, keep their comments to about 3 minutes, and don't feel compelled to repeat testimony that you've already heard today. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
No, thank you very much, Chairman Allen, and I wish to thank Assemblyman Yamada and you, Assemblyman Allen, for your perspicacious and insightful remarks and observations during this project. I am going to come at this for a brief period of time in a 180-degree different direction. I am the father of an adult child who is a client at Napa State Hospital. He has been locked down now for 44 weeks. And what it seems to be an argument, or what I am told is an argument between the Department of Mental Health and OSHA over the classification of the various working conditions. Clearly, Donna Gross's murder is an appropriate way to begin to attack this problem. But if one goes to the internet and looks up Napa State Hospital consent decree, one will come to understand that this has been a problem for 3 decades. And still, we don't have a solution. Mental hospitals, mental treatment facilities are inherently dangerous places. Why, at the time of Miss Gross's murder, was there not a plan in place to deal with a likely event, which is violence in a place where you keep violent people. I mean, it defies the logic of basic public administration, and I spent 26 years in government service as a mid-level bureaucrat in Marin County. This should not have been an unplanned event, but a likely one, and the way this was administered should have been at least the basic guidelines as to how to deal with the after effects of this should have been well in place and not talked about now. It isn't the first murder at Napa State Hospital, and it, unfortunately, given the nature of the population there, it probably isn't going to be the last at some place in the various 5 facilities. A great deal of attention has been paid to the needs of staff, and I heard something cogent from each one of the speakers that was here today. So you got a very, from a layman's perspective, a very clear understanding of the problems. But you have left out the patient population. I don't know whether you plan additional hearings in this regard, but you should at least formalize this by hearing from the loved ones and relatives of the people that have unfortunately come into this system. My son managed to get to the library once every 12 weeks. Okay? Once every 12 weeks, because staff wasn't available to take him. Because Napa State Hospital is in lockdown, he continually, on a daily basis when we talk to him, talks about the excruciating boredom and dullness and numbness that these people have. Now, you have to keep in mind that the majority of these folks are going to be on the outside at some time, either in the near future or in the far future. And they have lost 44 weeks of their life with no intervening sorts of, but the most basic treatment. And this is an intolerable situation. I think, Michael, given our mutual labor background where we first met a long time ago, 28 years ago, I believe, that the two parties, Cal OSHA and the Department of Mental Health, need to be brought together in a room and sit down and hash this out instead of this going on and on and on. The system doesn't benefit. The patients don't benefit. The staff certainly doesn't benefit. The taxpayer doesn't benefit when you're spending $200,000 a year on each one of these patients. And if it is a matter of money, it's got to, then let's look at it at a matter of money. Where are the economies of scale? Why aren't we isolating the bad behavior people right away and shipping them off to more important facilities instead of having them integrate and infect the whole population? I have been told by an officer with the Napa State Hospital Police that it's 10% of the population causing between 80 and 90% of the problem. And from my own observations on a weekly basis, that's probably true. So thank you for the practicality of your approach. I appreciate it. It's been a great event because I was expecting something far different. And the way that you're going about this in a practical way has been enlightening to me and given me more hope. But everybody has to get together to solve this problem, and it needs to be done. 44 weeks is enough. Let's restore some sort of sense of normalcy or normal behavior to this process and stop trying to fix blame, but let's get together and fix the damn problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. Yes. If come forward, yes.
Assemblyman Allen, remaining member of the committee. I want to thank you so much for allowing us this voice. Gandhi once said, "A man is the sum of his actions, of what he has done, of what he can do, nothing else." And so I would say to the Department of Mental Health, an administration is the sum of its actions, of what it has done, of what it can do, nothing else. October 23rd, 2010. Donna Gross was brutally murdered. 10 months ago, her life slipping away from her as she was unable to even cry out because of the dirt that had been shoved down her throat. It has been 10 months since Donna was murdered, and the Department of Mental Health has taken no visible action. I am not talking about forming committees and holding meetings. I am talking about changing the structures at the state hospitals so that they are safe. I am asking the Department of Mental Health, please stop talking about changes and make them. Where are the enhanced treatment units at every state hospital to house the most violent and dangerous patients? We do not need one pilot unit at one hospital in 2012 and a ponderous study to follow. We need units at every state hospital commensurate with their populations so that we can segregate the most violent patients from the general population with increased staffing and permanent hospital police presence. We must protect our patients and provide an environment where people, staff, and patients feel safe so that we can provide meaningful treatment. Perhaps this issue is not urgent to people in the Department of Mental Health Administration because it was not their coworker, their friend, their mother, their daughter and wife who was murdered. I am begging the Department of Mental Health to institute safety measures at all of the state hospitals. I am asking, as a social worker, as somebody's coworker and friend, and wife and mother. In 2 months, it will be 1 year since Donna's brutal and violent murder. And I just want to know from the Department of Mental Health what they are waiting for.
Thank you.
Mr. Allen, could you,
Yes.
I'm sorry, would you please identify yourself for the record?
Sorry.
That's
My
okay.
name is Corrine Weaver, and I'm a social worker at Napa State Hospital, as I have been for 10 years, 7 months, and 2 weeks.
Social worker too, thank you.
Thank you.
Assemblyman Allen, committee, I want to thank you very much. And Assemblyman
Identify
Allen.
yourself.
My name is Zach Hatton. I'm a chief steward for Napa State Hospital for ASME Local 2620, and I'm a recreation therapist on admission unit. Again, I want to thank the committee and thank you personally for coming to Napa, working with us, seeing what we're going through, and helping us work on the changes that need to happen. Like everybody said, it's been 10 months, and there's been very little progress towards a safer and more secure working and living environment for both the patients there and the staff members. The assaults are still high and security is still low. Our patients and staff have the right to live and work in a safe environment. And quickly, I want to talk about an issue that's really close to my heart. If one of our members becomes injured, as one of my social workers has, she was assaulted 2 years ago. She was assaulted on her right wrist, which was pretty badly damaged. She has not been able to work for 2 years. She's right-handed, so she can't write, she can't type. She's getting to the end of the workers' comp time, and there she is. She's a single mother. What's next for her? She can't use that hand, so that limits most of what she can do or will be able to do on top of working, but her livelihood as well. So I think it's extremely important that we act on these things and quit waiting. We've spent a lot of time talking. We've spent a lot of time in committees and hearings, and it's definitely time for the Department of Mental Health to step up and make some changes, and some quick changes. And to close, I just want to say that DMH needs to be held accountable for their failure to protect the patients and the staff in the state hospitals. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, and identify yourself.
Yes, my name is Jaime Garcia. I'm a senior site tech at Clingan State Hospital. I've been a SciTech now for about 5 years. I was injured in October of 2010 during a wall containment of a hypermanic individual that was going to stab another individual with a sharpened pencil. During the wall containment, it was me, another staff, HPO, and a psychologist who ended up running away instead of initiating the wall containment with us. So we pressed our red light, and we had to do immediate physical intervention due to the seriousness of the threat. What ended up happening during that wall containment was that I tore my shoulder. It's called a slap tear. And in February of 2011, I went under arthroscopic surgery for slap tear repair. And I'm only 33 years old and already went under the knife. Don't know how it's going to be down the road for me. It's something that we do all the time. I think since this injury, I've probably been assisted in maybe 5 or 6 takedowns, and I was off of work for 4 months, so I really haven't been back that long and already being engaged in that type of environment. So I just wanted to give my testimony on that. Also, that what I believe is the surgery was to help me to improve my range of motion in my arm and give me strength back in my arm so that I could still throw a football to my kids. Also, that I believe me and my coworkers are working in unsafe conditions every day due to the staffing ratios and that are not being completely appropriately allocated. And we need to I would like for us to have the staffing ratios re-looked at and make changes that show safety is first for our clients and for our staff. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Next.
My name is Angela Myers. I'm a psychiatric technician. My name is Angela Myers. I'm a psychiatric technician with Coalinga State Hospital for about the last 4.5 years. I currently, for the last 10 months, have worked on an RRU, which is also known as a residential recovery unit. Their staffing ratio is 1 psych tech to 50 patients. I work in the medication room, so I'm not out on the floor like Jaime is or some of the other psych techs here are. I'm in the med room handling all the tasks that an ICF would handle. There's also the 1 to 50 ratios for all 3 shifts. There's also 2 department police officers on staff that can do minimal tasks on the unit because they're there for security purposes and security purposes only. In the daily duties that I do, I take care of counts. Depending on the shift, it can be 1 to 2 patient counts per day. I go to do pharmacy runs, clinic runs, transcribing all the medication orders coming in from the physicians, verifying and contacting doctors and clinicians. I'm one person handling all the same issues, not only in the medication room, but also on the floor that arise on an ICF 1 to 8 ratio unit, but I'm 1 to 50. For example, receiving and removing laundry bins, having to attend meals off the unit, which is 1 to 2 per shift, depending on the shift, responding to other units' red lights and various other tasks, leaving my unit and my 50 patients alone, not having the level of care staff that they desperately need to have. Another example is approximately 2 weeks ago, in the middle of my scheduled medication pass, a patient walks up in front of another patient that I was preparing medication for. He had been in a physical altercation. I looked up because I noticed something out of the corner of my eye move. I looked up and this patient's face was completely bloodied. And I was like, wow, what happened to you? I stopped my medication pass. Now, mind you, I'm in a little, 8 by 8, 10 by 10 room. My med cart's right there. And I left the patient who I was preparing meds for, his medication's right there out in the open, free for anybody to come in, and left it unsecure because I have to go take care of another patient who is bloodied from a physical altercation. I don't know what kind of the severity of his injuries are. When I got him to the exam room and I contacted staffing to find out who my registered nurse was, come to find out my registered nurse was covering 3 units. In essence, 150 patients to 1 registered nurse. I have quite of an issue with that. So now I'm at 8 o'clock. I've got 1 hour to finish my med pass due to policies and the time constraint that I have to take care of and give medications to 50 patients. But yet I've got this patient who's bloodied and injured from a pretty bad physical assault. We took care of it, myself and the registered nurse. We took care of it. But there are so many duties that are to be taken care of. During the whole ordeal, I still had to finish the medication pass, care for the other 49 individuals that were on the unit, do my patient count because we have patient count at 9 p.m. at night, plus the incident report and all the notifications that are required to be made for a physical altercation or any kind of incident that occurs. On the RRU that I work, I have had patients receiving chemotherapy, returning from same-day surgical procedures, and I'm the only one person there to ensure their safety and security and their health. Anybody who knows me knows I will go the extra mile for my patients to make sure that they're okay, that they're healthy, that I'm going out there and I'm trying to check on them. And whenever we don't have the continuity of care with, the other shifts, I will stay for that second shift to continue the continuity of care for our patients, because I don't want a stranger coming in there that's not familiar with my patients to take care of them and them lack what they are used to getting. I don't think it's right. I think we are in desperate need of staffing, as someone to look at our staffing issues and help us, because it's dangerous. It's a health and safety issue, not only for the staff, but also for the patients. It's extremely dangerous.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephen Wright. I've been a psychiatric technician at Atascadero State Hospital for just under 10 years now. A lot of what I want to talk about has been touched on, but one of the big issues that I want to touch on is in the time that I've worked at Atascadero State Hospital, we've seen the radical change in the way the administration of medication to our patients is done. And I know this was touched on briefly, but with the court orders, mentally disordered offenders and incompetent to stand trials, they have that right to refuse to take medications. But then on top of that, we have the additional, with the recovery model, the wellness and recovery model, it very strongly pushes what they refer to as a mono or single medication treatment and discourages polypharmacy. And because of that, we are seeing that increase of undermedicated patients. We're seeing additional assaults, not just, and then the big thing that, yes, everyone's talking about the staff right now, but just as many, if not as many, or more, if not as many more, patients are being assaulted, being seriously hurt, being taken down to the urgent care room to have their faces sewed back together, just like the staff members are. So it's not just us that are feeling the impact, but it's very frustrating, because if you were to go to your doctor tomorrow and be diagnosed with cancer, would they say, okay, we've got treatments, but we're going to go with a single form of treatment, and we're going to start out at a therapeutic dose that's so low it may not even have an impact? We would never consider doing something like that for something like cancer or an infection that's going through your body. We'd say, okay, get out the chemo, get out the radiation, surgical options. Well, that's a polypharmaceutical, polytreatment format. And yet here we are, we're dealing with something called mental illness. Well, if it's an illness, why are we not treating it like an illness? We're addressing it like it's something else, but we want to call it an illness. And so it's very frustrating there. Now, the other thing I noticed was that there's a lot of reference to the economics of our situation. Well, if we go back just a few years to pre-wellness and recovery, at Atascadero State Hospital, it cost a little over $100,000 per patient per year. We are now up to over $200,000 per patient per year. Well, just the differential that the cost of the wellness and recovery model has put in, we could hire one psych tech for every single patient that is residing inside that facility. We need to address, the cost. I know it sounds terrible to say we're looking at cost and treatment, but the cost and the effectiveness of this wellness and recovery model and what we are gaining as our society. What is it accomplishing for us? Are we having a huge increase in the number of patients that are leaving our facilities and not coming back? Has recidivism dropped? I don't think will find that there's that significant of a change. But the cost has almost doubled. And yet, here we are saying, please, we need more money for staff. We need more money for this. And yet, we've just brought up the price of every other service by $100,000 each head. I mean, it's awe-inspiring. I don't think the general public has a clue the expenses that we're talking here per patient.
Thank you.
I want to thank, my name is Denise Nix. I'm the Chief Facility Steward at Metropolitan State Hospital, and I've been with AFSCME Local 2620, and I've been the Chief Steward for the last a little over 4 years. I've been assaulted several times. I've been hit, kicked, punched, and just over a year, last year I had my nose broke. And to the patients who assaulted me, there were no consequences. The safety and security issues we're addressing here today are not new. They're going back as far as the 80s. Read the headlines. There is a consistent problem with follow-through on the part of DMH and taking corrective actions, and instead making excuses. In my 8 years of working at Metro, it's been rare for the administration to seek out the expertise of line staff for assistance in decision-making. Asking for input for making policies is rare. I've held labor management meetings on a quarterly basis for the last 4 years, and every meeting we address safety and security issues. We bring forth viable solutions, and none of those solutions have been followed through. And every quarter, it's the same issues, and we bring up the same solutions. It's very frustrating. It's rare for the administration to communicate their actions to line staff. For the past 3 years, our members have met with, I just said that. Yeah, the solutions, they've fallen on deaf ears. At Metro, we're working together with the other other three labor unions, and we presented a list of 7 items to the executive director to address solutions to make the hospital safer. And to date, none of those items have been implemented or even validated. Instead, excuses were made. It's a budget issue. Okay, you can't put a price tag on someone's life. Recently, the grounds presence team has been implemented, and I applaud the efforts of forming the team so soon. However, the staff forming those grounds presence team has taken valuable staff off the units and not replaced, creating more staffing shortage. Recently, Metro has had several near misses. Those are like almost sentinel events, which could have been prevented if we had more staff. And it's only by the grace of God that another murder had not occurred. Are we waiting for another murder to happen? Please,
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who would like to come forward to testify?
Hi, I'm Jeff Dreyer. I worked 25 years at Napa State as a psych tech, and I've been retired 4 years. But I knew Donna. I talked with her. It's still important, and I got a lot of friends, and even the patients that I got along fine with. It has been 10 months. I was asked to read a statement from her daughter. Let me quickly read through this and get it in the record. Emergency security measures are necessary to prevent further injuries or fatalities at Napa. No patient or staff member responsible for their care and well-being should ever be subjected to the dangerous conditions in this facility. These institutions are intended for security, development, livelihood, rehab, and overall care of patients with mental illness. The damage and suffering caused as a result of countless assaults on patients and staff is undoubtedly spread like a sickness to their families. How many families have to wonder if their loved one will ever come home? This kind of fear and intense grief is immeasurable and extensive. Imagine if your mother or child walked the walls of an institution every day. Would you allow your son or daughter to receive care here? Would you want your husband or wife going to work only to wonder whether or not they would return, kissing them in the morning, sending them into battle every day? Each moment that passes without change allows another split second for an attack to occur. After every attack, another wave of suffering floods into a family home. When our mother was murdered, it took several hours to find her body. Her alarm button was useless. There was no one around to hear or see her or protect her. Something is gravely wrong with the current systems when a 14-year veteran psych tech can be brutally murdered while no one noticed, no one saw, no one heard her cries for help. So my question is, where's the funding for necessary security staff and systems that will prevent a future death, another violent attack, and another broken family? How many more people have to die before our cries for help are heard? Donna Gross spent a third of her life helping the mentally ill, when many people would prefer to ignore the suffering and unusual behaviors of an often intensely overlooked and misunderstood population. Her mother was a patient at Napa State. The other two-thirds of Donna's life was spent visiting her mother in institutions. When she was a child, she had lunch for her mother on the lawns of Napa State. We thought she was protected. In an unsafe environment, we had no idea. Donna had a compassion for her patients and clients that came straight from the heart and soul. Please help those that continue to work and reside in this hospital. And this signed Anna Bach. Now I've got 2 cents. You've heard a lot of this. A lot of it's repetitive. Almost any line staff could chapter and verse most of this. With criminals more filling up to 90% in the hospital, we had a lot more trouble protecting the little guy, and that's a shameful thing, because I personally was always very proud of that. No, you don't get to do that just because you're a big guy or you talk loud. You don't get to do that. And now there's such a all-pervasive climate of fear there, but between with the patients and the staff. I feel for the man with the family, the son that's locked down. It seems to be like institutions do that. It's like damage control or denial, or maybe just cover your butt. It causes them to enact policies that eventually just solve the problem, but it's like throwing out the baby with the bathwater. Cal OSHA fines, that wasn't very impressive. It seemed like too little, too late. No serious consequences. And then to fight it, to dispute it in court, that was news. That was quite interesting. Wellness and recovery needs a lot of investigation. We essentially can't send people to their rooms anymore. You can destroy a dining room. You walk back to the unit, they might give you a PRN, a med to make you calmer, and if you say you're calm, nothing happens. So essentially, you got away with it, and that is every unit, all over the hospital, all the other state hospitals. This is serious, and I'm done. But it has been 10 months. Would it speed it up if another person died? We've come close. So applaud your efforts and you staying. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't want to be accused of cutting this hearing short. If there's anybody else like to come up, we're going to take 1 or 2 more comments, and then we're going to be done. So if there's anyone else who'd like to testify, if not, Marika, would you like to make some comments, and I'll make the close?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, first of all, again, I want to thank Assemblymember Michael Allen for his leadership and true and abiding commitment. Having been a nurse himself and an attorney, I think that's a great combination. I'm a social worker, so maybe that's why we were both here to the bitter end. But I did want to say just a couple things. First of all, thank you to everyone who came to participate. I think this was a very very compelling hearing, all of the testimony, and I did want to acknowledge the fact that Mr. Allenby is still here with us, along with his staff, to stay for the whole hearing. I think that speaks volumes, and I know Mr. Allenby has been around state service for a number of years, so we really appreciate that. Just a couple comments. If the number of assaults per day is averaging 3.3 patient on staff, and then 7.1 patient to patient, that also speaks to the fact that when other staff have to rush to the aid of the person being assaulted, that leaves other holes in the system, and that's a vulnerability that is just unacceptable. We just heard the nurse who said what she had to go through ministering to 50 patients, but having to leave meds unprotected while having to rush off. I mean, it just defies logic that we would place patients or staff in that kind of vulnerable position. And I think there are things that we must address quickly. I want to, again, just say I'm very glad to be a part of this committee and look forward to some action. Thank you.
Thank you, Marika. Yeah, I'll just make a few closing remarks. First of all, it's obvious by the amount of people who stayed to hear the whole hearing that this is a vital concern to all of you. And so I thank everyone so much for participating. Like I promised the participants when we began this meeting, I'm looking to shed light on this, not heat. We don't need a dog and pony show. What we need is change. And I want to assure everyone that I warned you that some of the committee members had to leave, but they'll be getting an earful from me in terms of what we heard today, and that the work does not stop here. I've been meeting with the patients, with members of DMH, with the governor's office, with everyone to try to get a comprehensive look at what's going on. And of course, it's troubling when you see things that have still been identified as problems back in the 1990s and they continue. But what I see is an acceleration of the problem. And to me, I'm a very concrete kind of person. I'll give you an example. When I was a psychiatric nurse, I felt that my number one duty when I came onto a locked unit, I worked crisis in a locked unit, was to assure the safety of everyone. The safety of the staff and the patients are interrelated. You can't have one without the other. So as we move forward, when I was at Napa State, I heard from the patients about what it was like to be locked down and what were they doing with their energy and the absolute boredom that they felt by not being able to exercise, do their daily activities. And I heard from the staff. I've heard from the administration about coming to terms with this, grappling with these problems. So to me, what we'll do is that we will put together a report about what we heard today, a summary, and then we're going to continue talking with the governor's office. We're going to go to the budget committees of both houses, bring the issues and the needs forward. And to me, once again, I'll just emphasize, I think in a very concrete term, the state hospitals have a mission. The mission statement needs to be looked at, reevaluated. But there's nothing wrong also with stating some concrete goals. Like, for instance, I'll give you an example. One of the most concrete goals ever given in politics was John F. Kennedy's speech about we were going to go to the moon in 10 years. We were going to land a man on the moon. Very concrete. People understood what it was, and we fulfilled that mission. To me, we need to be saying, in 3 years, we're going to have an 80% reduction in the amount of violence and the injuries in the state hospital, continue working. So I'm pulling out a number out of thin air, but what I'm saying is we need a consensus on what that goal is so that we're not here in 3 years saying, oh, it's increased more, and we have more human wreckage, whether it be patients or staff. Yes, it's a matter of resources, but it's also a matter of will and taking a look at the way we're utilizing the resources and trying to find ways to move forward constructively together. And so all I can tell you, and I thank you so much for staying with me. We did this at the last hearing as well. We were the last two holdouts here, is that part of it is continuity and working through these things together. And so thank you so much. And my pledge to you, and Marika will be working with me and other committee members, that we're going to continue working with everyone to see an absolute improvement in patient care, safety for the staff, and moving forward as we separate out the state hospitals to have their own department. With that, thank you so much. This hearing is concluded.